This conference will now be recorded.
And let's see, I'll stop sharing my screen for now. There we go. So how you guys doing?
Doing good.
That looks like I'm looking up too far. All right. What you got going on over there, Glenn? Oh, using the pass-through. Your mic's off.
He's using the mute button too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm using my pass through as a saw. I don't got the 4-inch lens hooked up yet, but it's half-inch. I'm just using the 2-inch lens.
Gotcha.
With the 1 millimeter distance.
Yeah.
Which
Awesome.
seems like it's working good.
So, hey Ron, how's it going?
Doing good. I've been doing a lot of work and thinking about I actually have a few questions this week. I'm thinking about a high-res lens for photograph work and just wondering what you have to do when you switch a lens.
Basically twist the brass knob, put in the new one. Of course, you'll have to manually focus on anything except for the stock 2-inch. That's the only one you ever use autofocus for at this point. So you'd manually focus it about the distance of a quarter. You can use that as a feeler gauge. That's about right. You'll want to use a lot of air with it to evacuate some of that debris that can accumulate on the bottom of the nozzle because it's flat. And we've heard talk about some different release agents, spraying it with food grade silicone or Teflon based something, to make it not accumulate so much of that stuff. But ultimately those things can get pretty dirty pretty quick. We've got some documentation on that. I haven't played with mine very much, but again, I don't really make things. And one of the things I want to start doing is getting into the photos and do some high res, but I'm not quite to that level yet. So maybe you can show me a few things.
I'm getting lucky anyhow.
Yeah. So did you have any other questions? Now, what have you got, a Nova 24?
Yeah.
Okay, because and it's not quite as black and white. It's not double or half. It's not that quantifiable. But when you use a high resolution lens, you're also making your spot size a lot smaller, and you're still got the same amount of beam density. You're still pushing however many watts into a smaller area. So that equates as a realization of an increased power. So that lens will run a little hotter. It is basically what I'm getting at. So just because it's concentrating that entire amount of energy into that smaller spot size. So.
Okay, now maintenance on the machine. I've heard different things on how often you should do it, and is there anything that's going to show up that's going to show me it's time?
No, not as far as any sort of reminders or anything like that.
I just meant, like, will it affect the quality or something like that?
Oh, well, yeah. Some of the stuff, if you don't PM it, it can manifest itself as issues. Let's see, PM. There was a question about that earlier. Of course, the lenses, especially focusing lens is especially important. But they showed a weekly check on the mirrors and beam combiner. A lot of people miss the beam combiner, and that actually right from the bat, that's in the near field of the tube output. So you're effectively dropping your power, a minute amount just by any time a beam passes through any optic. There's going to be some loss there. They're not 100% efficient. So that beam combiner actually, just to get that red dot function, kills your power, a minute amount. It's insignificant, but it happens. But when they get dirty, that can amplify that effect real quickly. You can have the same kind of failure on the beam combiner that you do on the focus lens when it builds up corrosion and it gets fouled, and then cracks because it overheats and bakes itself. That same thing can happen with the beam combiner. It's not as prevalent because it's in the back of the back of the machine, and not a whole lot of smoke gets back there. But that's just something to be aware of.
Okay, and the last one I had was I hooked up a compressor today, and I have like your kit, and I forget which way adjusts the air on that two-hole port you sell.
You talking about the knob that you can pull up?
Yeah, the knob
Yeah,
you
I
pull
think,
up.
yeah, I think looking from the top, I think it's still lefty loosey, righty tighty. I think left will give you more
Okay.
air, and right will tighten it down.
All right. That's what I needed. Thanks.
hmm hmm So, hey, Chris,
What's
glad you
up?
could make it, man.
Yep.
So let me stop sharing again. Yeah. So in case y'all didn't know, Chris is on our team, on the tech support team, and he does evenings and weekends and whenever he can pop in, because he's got a 9 to 5 regular thing. But he's a whiz on these lasers. He's going to put me out of business pretty soon. I'll have to go back to selling machines. And but he's helping us out, and he's doing a great job. So we're growing. So you guys can fire away at some questions at him too.
Yeah, don't be disappointed when I answer the phone for tech support.
So
They'll be like, I wanted Brian. I'm sorry.
so does anybody else have anything else?
I got a couple of quick ones.
Okay, sure.
I put the cam on, and one of the things I'm in is I'm doing some really small stuff.
Okay.
So it's got to be really accurate round. So I'm putting it right in the center. What I found was the mount, and I don't know if it's defective mount or I just got to glue it, but the mount moves around just ever so slightly. And that little ever so slightly, when you open and close the door, it'll shift my image just a little bit. But because the stuff is so small and it's so precise, it does shift it.
Sure.
Should I try and glue this, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that happens in some of these mounts, and they're just 3D printed, over Jason prints them at Lightburn. But you can put a little dab of hot glue or something in there. What we find sometimes is the actual camera module will slide around in the mount, and maybe the mount doesn't snap down, all the way. But in those instances, a little dab of super glue or a hot glue, on the board or something to keep it stationary is absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do that, but I didn't know if maybe
Yeah.
a few and okay.
Yeah.
The only other question I had real quick, and this probably, I'm sure it's been brought up, I just haven't heard it yet. I know, the larger nozzle on the 2-inch lenses for engraving and the smaller ones for cutting and engraving. I've been doing some small engravings also for my wife's artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think between the two lenses, and I really don't see a difference.
Well,
so where for photo quality more, or?
You talking about the nozzles that have the different apertures, or are you talking about the actual lenses themselves? You're talking about the nozzles, right?
Yeah.
So originally these machines just had one air stage on them. It didn't have the dual stage air assist. So in order to be able to cut and engrave without having to adjust your air pressure every time, you can put that other nozzle on that has the wider orifice, and it gives more diffused air. It's not such a jet. So that way it does better on engravings. It's another way to mitigate the high flow of air when you're engraving. And I don't use mine now except as a diagnostic tool most of the time, except on some acrylic if I'm doing some really light, surface engraving on some acrylic for some edge lit or something. But typically I'll use, the standard one, because now you can adjust it down, and just use the low stage for engraving. So there's really no need to switch nozzles, at least not for me. Do you see what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
I control the airflow, whether I want low or high air. I don't have to do it with a nozzle anymore. So at least that's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Because switching back and forth, I was like, I don't see a difference. but it's because of the low stage in the air. I'm sure it's the whole thing. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we are now. I never think to turn the chat window on. So I'm looking now. All right. So, all right. Hi, how are you?
Are you talking to us?
Yes, absolutely. I'm putting you on the spot.
We're Mark and Brenda. We're pretty new. I've had the 35-100 about 3 weeks now.
Okay.
And I've got a couple of questions about light. We've got everything set up and we've burned some stuff successfully, and I think some of what we've done has come out pretty decent.
Okay.
Anyway, I was doing some research today and I found about calibrating the axis. So I feel certain that I know the answer, but I just wanted to ask anyway. Is that something that I need to do, or I'm sure that the company that built the laser would have done that?
Typically they're just right. Typically that only comes up if somebody notices a difference. And an easy way to check would be, for instance, just to cut out or draw a 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter square, for instance, then measure it and see how it's off. And if you're talking half a millimeter or something like that, that might be a little iffy. But if it's any more than that, you may stand to recalibrate. Typically, nobody has reported that that's needed to happen, on a regular basis.
Okay.
That's just to fine tune it, to step it in real tight and get it perfect.
Okay. But I would cut it out and measure that, correct?
Right. Or you could etch it. You don't have to cut something all the way out. You could etch it lightly, just do an outline of a square, do a line, and then measure it. And say if you inputted, say it's for the x-axis, you need to pay attention to which axis you're looking at. If it's on the x-axis, you could go into that wizard in the machine settings. Is that what you're talking about in Lightburn, where you can input the value of what you wanted and what actually showed up, and it'll make the conversions for the steps per rotation? That's how that works. So it's just a wizard.
Okay.
So you'd enter, basically, if you did a 20 millimeter square and it came out 19 by 22, you would go into X and say, I asked for a 20, I got 19, boom, and it'll make the changes. And you can go into Y and do the same thing. So
My next question has got to do with Lightburn, and of course I have those settings. I did the initial settings, setting it up to 900 by 600 in Lightburn. So when I'm creating something on the screen of Lightburn and zoom in and zoom out, the object that I'm working on goes beyond the borders of the screen, and it just seems like it stays discombobulated. And for me, I want to get it back in the middle of the Lightburn screen. Is there, if you understand what I'm,
so
like if I'm working on something, I'm creating something, and just say if you draw a box in there.
okay, how about
so if I zoom in and zoom out a couple of times, it goes off the screen. See, mine doesn't do that. Yeah, see how it went off the screen, but when I zoom back out, it's I don't know if it's just me or if I'm doing something wrong, but
well, I've been running Lightburn for, I guess, 4 years now, and the zoom still trips me up, and I'm getting better at it. But if I wanted to zoom in on Easy's nose, I would just get right over his nose and keep holding that on his nose. You see what I mean? And you'll come right into it. That's kind of the trick. If I wanted to focus on his hat, you got to keep your arrow at the hat, and then you'll get right in on it. Now there's some buttons up here that can help. You can pan using this. Can you see that? That'll allow you to grab and move it around. And then real quickly, you can zoom to extents just by doing that number right there, and that'll get you centered back out all the way.
So that pan button has to be on. I see now. That's where it's messed up for me. That makes more sense now.
Yeah.
You can also you can hold your click your scroll button down and move your screen also.
Okay, I'll try that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let me you talking about using the built-in mouse stuff? Like.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying now.
Hold on, let me get out of that mode though. Let me try it. You sure can hold the middle button down, scroll wheel down, and you'll do the same thing.
Okay.
And while we're in here, if you don't know what some of that stuff is, you can hover over it and like hit the F1 key, and it'll bring it up for you and the documentation for that. But what's cool about that is he's built in a whole lot of hotkeys and shortcuts and things like that. So this is an easy way to go look for them, like for the node editing as far as trim and extend. I didn't even know those were in there, until I started playing with this documentation stuff. So, but that's kind of a neat thing.
As far as the camera goes, can you open your screen back up on Lightburn?
Sure.
And when we've got the camera set up, actually we've got two cameras because we're running on two different computers in different rooms.
Okay.
So in past videos, I've seen where you were like you would go back and forth from, it looked like you closed the camera down. I mean, I don't mean that it's off. I meant that you were like working on the screen and you would go back and forth and.
So like, yeah, and I don't have my light on my machine, but I've got a little piece of MDF in there, so I can work on the overlay. You know, is that what you're meaning?
No, I mean the camera that's on the right, the camera view that's on the right there.
Yeah, the preview. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there a way to like minimize that to where, well, I want to say in a video that I saw that you did, it's like you went back and forth and you minimized the camera on the right to where it wasn't in view.
Well, typically I'll do that because I'll have to switch layers and play over here. I just have it as a tab.
Okay.
But now you can pull it out of the dock, you know, and do something like this with it. You can close it out altogether. And if you want to bring it back, go up into Windows and bring it back in, then you can just dock it back in there if you want to. So
I understand. I understand now. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's all I've got.
Sorry, hate that we have all these newbie questions, so.
Oh, that's what this is for. So yeah, y'all have at it.
Yeah.
So, you have anything else while you're thinking about it?
I think that's it for right
That's it for now. Maybe next
Okay.
week we'll have something
Sure.
more.
Hey, Brian, Tommy's asked quite a few questions in the chat there that some people are starting to answer in the chat, but might be worth talking through a few of them there.
Yeah, let me go back and look here real quick. I'm terrible about looking at this.
Yeah.
A lot of wood. Trying to get where the meat of it is.
Oh,
Yeah, scroll right up to the top.
The clean pack. There y'all are talking about the Aeon.
yeah, looks like that's what we're referring to. I thought it was talking about where they integrate everything into the machine frame, but
No, well, they've got linear rails on them, and they put them behind the belt and use a big, huge, wide belt so that there's not a lot of opening for the stuff to get in there. But you can't tell me stuff still doesn't get in there. And what it does, if it's all hidden back there, you got to take all that crap apart to even get to the bearings to maintain them. So I don't really like that idea.
They got the Japanese highway rails in them, not linear rails.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about linear bearings in general, where we use the U-channel rollers that are self-lubricating. You know, we don't have to pack them and lubricate them and clean them, and we don't have to mess with them. There's none of that, you know. So, yeah. Is there other stuff in there? I'm terrible about looking through these things.
Yeah, go to the very top, Brian.
Okay. Chat questions. Thunder have issues moving the air. Dual vent. Well, ours is a kind of a downdraft system. You know, the vent is below the bed. So it pulls everything down and right out, and it usually pulls it from the back because we keep our scan angle at 0 degrees. The dual vents, I mean, you're still going to move. Well, there may be more surface area open, you know, with more vent space, more airflow. But if you're asking if Thunder has a problem moving air, just the way it's designed, no, I haven't heard anybody, as long as their exhaust system is, within specification, have any kind of problems with that.
I'm really shocked at how well it moves air. I have mine in an upstairs bedroom, and I built a window vent.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I have that, not the stock air, but I have I forgot what you call it, with like you have on yours in your video.
Cloudline Infinity.
Yes, I have the 8 inch, I think it is, and it moves very well.
So, yeah, they move quite a bit of air. A lot of times you get to the point of diminishing returns where you're going to have to start thinking about your inflow of air because you're exhausting so much. You got to make sure that that's balanced. He had a couple other questions here. How often do you have to clean the chamber for soot and debris? I wipe mine down with a terry cloth or a microfiber cloth, including the gantry. That's all the maintenance I do to it typically, except once a month I'll rub some light oil over it because of some corrosion that could occur because of dissimilar metals where those rails are pressed in. But I just wipe mine down every couple of days. There's not a whole lot of maintenance. Clean the fans out every month. And there, he asked if Thunder will go to a clean pack design. We don't need to because we don't use linear bearings at all. We use sealed, self-lubricating U-channel, U-groove roller bearings. As far as holding materials down, we've got a honeycomb and a that will hold magnets and a blade system. And Jason with Rotoboss, he's on here. He makes some clamps. Lots of different people make all kinds of different ways to clamp and support material. So there's a lot of options for that. Use a green dot instead of a red dot laser. You can if you want to. I don't know why you'd want to, but sure, why not? You can put a green dot in there as long as it's visible laser. And it's, I think, a 10 millimeter barrel on that thing. Whatever it is, you have to measure the outside diameter of the module. And it's a 5-volt module. So make sure you get a 5-volt one. Grid tables, the honeycomb, we can get them. They're special order. You just call and we can have one in 3 weeks, month, maybe, I think, because we have ships coming over frequently. And then he asked about, now this is a good question, about changing the mirror design like the Odin. And it's also like Epilogue, and it's just a mirror, and then it's got the air assist nozzle right there beside it. So I don't know that we'll do that. We like ours because they're rugged and durable, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We don't really need to be lighter. We can handle 1,000 millimeters per second with that big old hefty gantry, so there's not a really need to. And then he asked about RF, the door. Sorry, I skipped one. He asked about the door, the glass, and it does mitigate the laser frequency. So you don't have to wear glasses as long as the doors are all closed. And he asked about RF tubes in the Nova series. We already offer RF tube for the Nova series. We have for years. You can get it up to 60 watts with an air-cooled RF tube. They're special order. I'll have to get you the specifications on it, but we've offered RF for quite a while.
Yep, and Grant, I think Grant's just joined too, so I'm
Yeah,
sure
he can
could assist with that as well, right?
Sure. So sorry, I just kind of went off and went down the bullet list, and there's probably a few more things, but that's when they're starting to volley back and forth. So if there's any other things, you can point me to it. But I think we hit most of it. So is there anybody else that has anything?
I got a few questions if you can help.
Sure.
So I bit the bullet. I got a Nova 24 coming over.
Okay.
Just curious on where I can find dimensions for this thing so I can build a nice little cart. I saw someone built a cart on this page or on the Facebook page that was really nice, but it had monitor stands and things like that. But
have you been to our support site?
Yeah, I'm on it right now, and I typed in 24 and
type in stand, and it'll bring you to this stand options. There's our factory option available. There's this will start at the point where Robert is talking about his, and then there is ooh, my page is messed up a little bit, but
okay,
yeah, we've got yeah.
Cool.
Some dimensions and some other options. Awesome still on there. So yeah, that'll give you a few things.
Great.
And you got anything else?
No, I'm nervous as all hell.
Don't be. Drive it like you stole it, man. It'll handle it. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got mine. I got mine last week and got set up over the weekend, and I've tried to find a reason to have to bug Brian or someone in the tech support team. Any issue I've run into, in existing articles covered it, right? So it's pretty well documented, some of the issues. Couple of things that I ran into, right? So I went in and put my scanning offsets in, right, from the card. One that I did notice, right, and once I went to make my my first engraving, I noticed there was a problem with it. Went back to it, was put my scanning offsets in millimeters, but had my my default set to inches, right? So that converted them when you
Yeah.
input them. So I
You
input
put-
them as inches, even though they were in millimeters on the card. So went
Mm-hmm.
back and fixed that, right? There was already information telling you not to do that, but I just missed that, right? But it was easy to go find. A couple of things on the rotary that I went back and found. One thing I noticed on that, Brian, on your video, the light burn version that you had versus the new one. So I was thinking it was a light burn issue, but it was the enable rotary option on the main page.
Uh-huh.
Right, I was looking for that, thinking, oh, they changed that in Lightburn. We had to go find it in the main, in the main machine settings to make it appear on there. So that was one.
Right.
So I couldn't get it to frame to begin with. Right.
It
Then
won't.
went back and found it won't frame from Lightburn. You got to frame it from the Ruida
Yeah.
controller. But so
Yeah,
far, what I
that's-
found is anytime there was an issue, I've not found anything that wasn't well documented. It was just getting back to where it was documented and working through it. Been
Awesome.
very successful. I've played with some designs on some cups already. I've cut MDF. I've cut 2x4s with it. I've played with quite a bit and just tested the machine out.
Awesome. What do you think so far?
It's good. Really like it. I'm going to start playing with some acrylic and some other things when I get some more material in. But
Yeah.
so far so good. I managed to find a good deal on some slate to make some coasters with.
Nice.
And, it's one thing I did notice that on the materials bit, right? So going in and looking at like the material library file
Mhm.
as a starting point, and then you saw some of the emails or some of the comments on the Facebook group back and forth on the Lightburn test file. Found a real useful website with the that generates the automatic files for Lightburn with a different
Yeah.
power scale. Those are very intuitive and useful. I was really impressed with that, how well that worked.
I stole that link from maybe you when I saw it, and I'd seen it in the past and forgotten about it. So I added it to that material test file article at the bottom,
Yes.
so that people can go use that, because that is awesome. Especially, it'll teach you also, because it's got the other tools about the line interval, and it'll teach you about
Yes.
how the line interval works and doing the inlays or the joints, getting the offset right. So that's some cool stuff in there.
So one issue I found where when I go to look for the easy route of, hey, I found so and so, right? Chris Lacasio's got the 5100 watts. So I see some of his settings. I said, well, I've got a 130, so let me go determine what settings I need based on what he's done already. If you use that advanced file, you set your power limit at 100, and now I put in the same settings that Chris did because I've effectively derated my machine to a 100, and then it makes me have to stop doing math every single time I need to determine that Chris's was at 60%. That's 60 watts. I need to determine what 60 watts is on the 130 machine. So it actually makes you have to think a little bit less.
Yeah. And, there's some conversion for that, but, each tube has a different power curve, and each power supply has a
Exactly.
different response time. So it's kind of a rabbit hole. But, yeah, at least we're standardized enough we can get in the ballpark. It may not be a home run, but usually it's in the ballpark. So that's a good thing.
So a question in regard to that, what do I do to actually figure out my curve on my 100?
There's some feedback coming in, some noise from somewhere. I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat it?
So in regard to what you were just talking about, how do I figure out my power curve on my 100 watt tube?
Well, I mean, ultimately, 100%, our machines are calibrated. The power supplies are calibrated to the tubes so that you won't overdrive them. And they also produce 10% over what the rated power is. So there's a whole bunch going on there in the config file. So it's not really something that you can just do math in your head and figure it out, because there's a whole lot of variables going on there. But ultimately, the libraries, have you seen the materials libraries you can download?
Yes. Yeah. We've got it installed, and
okay.
Yeah, we've looked at it.
I mean, as far as determining what,
but that's just general, rough general settings for different materials, correct?
Right. And it, it's not a comprehensive list and not every material will be in there. And I'm working on something maybe one of these days that I can put out where we can figure out a way to get some community input and maintain a database, a library that'll integrate with Lightburn. But that's way down the road.
Well, I mean,
And what I found to do there was if you take that as a starting point, right? So if you went in, found your machine, and let's say it was a 1/2-inch MDF you wanted to cut. If you took that 1/2-inch MDF as a starting point, plug that in the middle of your test file, right, from power and speeds, and centered it in that grid, right? You would go above and below on both the power and speeds, go find the one you want, and then you can go in and create a new material in that material file, save it for what you've done. And what I found is I'm saving it for the type of wood or the type of acrylic, where I got it from, the dimensions on what worked well. Go in and save it as your own. It's a 3/8-inch piece of walnut from this vendor, and then, or hey, I got this piece of cast acrylic for this. Save it and add it to your list there, and then just go back to your own presets that you've tested.
Okay. So you're adding that to the actual library? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So once I dial in the settings there, you can go in and just add from your current project, your Lightburn project, and go in and create your own custom text for it so it stands out. And hey, this is my settings I've dialed in for this particular material, and you can go back and use them.
Yeah.
Another thing to remember is those settings are going to correlate to how clean your lens and mirror are too. So if your mirrors are dirty, you find yourself keep having to raise that power up above what your set point was. Check those out too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't take much. It's amazing that little beam of light can cut through some of this stuff, but the smallest things can really throw it out of whack. So it doesn't take a lot.
You can add notes to every Lightburn project. You can make those notes pop up. So as you save things, you can add little tidbits for yourself. That's a nice little feature.
Yeah, I'll pull that up real quick. Yeah, show notes. Then you can put in whatever you want, and then you can make it where it'll pop up. That's good, especially if you're going to share it with someone else. You can have notes about how to set up the artwork and what power your laser is or whatever, in there in the front. So that is kind of neat. So let's see. But I was playing it, if nobody has anything else, I was thinking of a second topic for this thing. And let me share my screen again.
Before you jump on that, Brian, one other thing while you're pulling that up. So I've had a couple of people were asking about the little small PC that I showed. So that one, I've got it on the laser, works phenomenally, right? It's hooked up. It's very small, compact. It works great. And it saves me moving laptops around and potentially knocking a laptop off the end of the laser or wherever you've got it set. But yeah, it actually works really good and as just a dedicated PC. And I've got it connected to the internet, so I can use Dropbox or email files back and forth, or you can just share it through your local network.
That's good stuff. I imagine we'll start seeing those getting popped on the back of a lot of people's lasers.
Yeah.
So I do got a question then. So when I got my 24, it comes with 2 licenses of Lightburn, correct?
Correct. And if you email them and ask nicely, they'll give you a 3rd.
Tell Brian.
All right. So because the laser, I have a feeling that I'm going to be doing all the design and the laser is in a different building.
Okay.
So if I do all the design and everything else, I need another PC or laptop or whatever to do that, or can I just place the file on a network drive? They go grab it, put it in, and then take that file that I have, put it on a USB drive, and then pop it into the machine?
Yeah, well, that function's built into Lightburn, as a matter of fact. So, whenever you get your file ready and it's all set up, you can click Save RD File, have your thumb drive ready, and save it. And then you go plug the thumb drive right in the laser and call it up using the control panel of the laser. So you can run it untethered. You don't even need a computer.
Got it.
The other option would be to network the machine. You need to be careful with that because there are some instances where this machine is autonomous. If you send a job to it, things are going to be on fire. So you want to be careful with that, but you can also control it via the network and actually send the file. Mine won't send because I don't have my laser on. Send it over to the controller and then you can walk over there and pull it up. So that's another option. But the USB option would be the way, or, you know, a lot of people that are in production environments or do repetitive things, they'll load them all up on the USB drive if they don't want to stay tethered, put them all in the, you know, memory of the machine and just leave them there, and then they can choose between them, you know, however they want to do the job. So you got a few options that way.
So if I do that, well, because I'll be making tags to go stick on like electrical panels and things like that.
Okay.
So my stuff will change all the time. So I just plan on making a template and then importing stuff, either typing, or I think Lightburn has a process to where if you have, it's a 1x4 tag and I can put so many of them on a 12x20 sheet of plastic, and then I can just engrave it and then engrave, cut, not all the way through, just partially through, and then snap them off later.
Sure. Absolutely. You could do that. You could also use perforation mode and make a small perforation, you know, that might help it cut, you know, where you can help it snap off easier. You know, if you're getting real close to the edge where it's getting too thin, you can also create tabs where it'll snap off, but then that'll leave some rough edges. So the way you're talking about is probably the best. But yeah, there is variable text, and you can use a CSV file, you know, spreadsheet to do that and populate the text in those things. So
yeah, that's the other. So I got to figure out Lightburn.
Yeah. Well, they got a lot of good help stuff already built in. So I checked their support forum. They got a great bunch of people over there answering questions. And then there's all kinds of other stuff here. So definitely their documentation is awesome. And like I said, you know, you can just hover over something and hit F1. That one's just going to give you hotkeys. That was actually the tabs, but I'm going to hover over node editing again. Then it'll bring it up. And this documentation, I love this new documentation that they put together. It's spectacular. So a lot of good stuff.
All right. Well, it should. I mean, if I can draw in Revit, AutoCAD, and other stuff in 3D and Bluebeam, I'm sure I can figure out Lightburn.
Oh yeah, this will be a piece of cake for you. So, yep. Well, cool. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, Tommy's got one.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tommy, do you have audio? It's basically, does the target mode work well with the camera for large jobs require the pass-through? I think what he's referring to is the print and cut inside of Lightburn.
Yeah, if you're talking about the print and cut, you don't even need the camera for that. But yes, it does work good. And the camera, if you are talking about that, you can maintain an accuracy of about a 0.5 millimeter, I think. Corel versus, well, neither one of those are actually designs or actually computer softwares. I'm sorry, laser control software. Corel and Adobe are just vector design suites. You know, Lightburn is actually what controls the machine also, but it does have design stuff built in. If you're asking if it's a full suite, it's pretty powerful, but if you're used to drawing in Corel or Adobe and you do some, you know, high level graphics and real detailed stuff and you've been doing it for 10 years in there, you're welcome to use that with it and just import the stuff right into Lightburn when you're done. So, yeah, the target mode, I think he is talking about the print and cut.
Yeah.
So, but, and there's a Corel plugin. Oh, let me turn that on. I was playing with that last night. So let's just say, for instance, that I'm in Corel Draw. I'll have to probably drag it over there to the other side.
You're talking about the macros, right?
Yeah. I just started playing with it the other, because I haven't ever had Corel Draw until recently. I'm waiting on it to load. It's a little sluggish.
That's all I use. You just click on a button up in the tabs menu on top once you set it up, and it directly imports it, opens up Lightburn and everything.
So we'll just open up. And this is what I was going to talk about earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this is something that I just found on one of those free sites. So I'm going to open that up, and I don't want to do anything on it. I'm just going to take it straight over to Lightburn. And there it is. But look at all the junk in there. I was looking at some of these, man, some of these vectors, and they're horrible. Some of these files that are either where you buy them or whatever. Some of them are just not laser ready. This one's not too bad, but a lot of them use masking, you know, because they're done for print. And all that masking stuff in there converts to those vector stuff, and it's insane. But yeah, I really like that about the Corel thing with that plugin. That's kind of cool. Which basically all it does, it saves it as an AI file and then just opens it up in Lightburn. That's all that macro does. But it saves a step. So.
But you can open up an AI file, yeah, if you already had it, or an SVG file natively into Lightburn.
Oh yeah, yeah. AI, it'll accept. It'll read native AI files. Yeah, most everything, even a PDF, as long as it's got the vector data in it or the bitmap data. So. All right. Hey Mark, how are you?
Hey Brian, good to see you.
Good to see you. I got my other thing, and I love them. And I loosened up my stuff first because I told you I had a heavy hand. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been having a heck of a time with that, but I think I finally am on top of it. So
yeah,
I'll take care of my customers.
Yeah, and that's kind of weird because I don't think China ever thought that dimension would matter for anything, you know, so it probably wasn't considered in the tolerances, maybe, I don't know, but I'm still running that up to flagpole to see what I can find out. So on
Good,
that,
thank you.
So cool. Well, Chris, do you have anything? You've been sloshing around in the thunder pit for a couple of weeks now. Do you have any observations or anything?
Install your FTDI driver.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean, I was just playing around the other day with some Lightburn. There's so many cool little features in there. One of them that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is the Z-axis motion. If anybody here uses that one, it's fairly useful, where you can step the head down, or actually step the material up for your second pass, or even as you start, and you know, versus focusing into the material. So if you're trying to cut through some thick ply or thick material, it's a very handy feature. You got to enable it, and of course know what you're doing when you use it. But man, it's convenient.
And there's even a ramp test, or a version of a ramp test, you know, the focus test, that also uses the Z controls, which just, it pulses it at different heights, and it's basically the same as a ramp test, so you can determine your optimal focus, and you know, double check and make sure your focal gap tool is right or whatever. So that's kind of neat too.
Yep.
So. But that's about all I had. I think we are, and you know, I was talking about flip-flopping and having a thing one week, you know, with questions, and the next week the other. I still think that's confusing. So I think what I'll do is do it like this, but I'll have a surprise topic, and when it starts getting quiet, I'll just pull it up and we'll start working on it until somebody has questions. So it'll kind of be both. What do you think about that? I want to see if we give that a try. I just don't want to start tweaking too much stuff on this too much, but I don't want it to remain stagnant either. So that's kind of what I was thinking about. And I'll just build up I've almost got the form built. I'm going to put it out. I guess I could do a poll on Facebook, but I got a Google form that'll go to a spreadsheet so people can suggest topics. And then I'll go through and look at the ones that are alike and pick the ones that are most, you know, requested. So that's kind of going to be my approach, I guess. Oh, Chris, I haven't told you about that yet. So that was kind of my approach.
5 demos.
Okay.
Unannounced.
I'm used to playing by myself. I'm not used to having a teammate, so I forget to think about him sometimes. I'm working on that. I apologize. I got to keep you in the loop.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be good. You know, demonstrate some things and generate some questions out of it.
Yeah.
Maximize use of the machine.
Sure. So, Anyway, that's all I got on this side. And we're still waiting on word on the fiber. Man, that's just tearing me alive. But we're waiting on the FDA still. So as soon as we hear something about that, we'll let her rip. You know, that'll be the headlines for all of the groups. As soon as if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, if I get an email from China and I happen to be awake, I'm posting it right then.
Yeah. Well, I was on Amazon today shopping around at lunchtime. I saw somebody else has a fiber now, and maybe they've had it for a while. So we got to get ours going. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
And there's something like, I did some of that row mark this week. And they got all these materials. You got to have a fiber to cut. And I'm just like, ooh, I want it. So.
Yeah. Well, you did those 2mm letters, and did you see which ticket that was? Where
It was a guy named Craig. I responded back to him.
Cool.
I don't think he replied back to me after that though. Yeah, gotcha. Some tiny letters.
Wow. I tried that in some rubber stamp material, and it's tough, even on an 80 watt. I couldn't imagine like on a 130, because you'd really have to dial that down, like really, really tight.
Ended with 20% power on the 80 watt and 500 speed, so really not blazing fast. And I did make the text bold because that, you know, as you're trimming it, that I think it was aerial text. It wasn't anything fancy, but cleaned it up, and sure enough, there was gold left, and it looked good.
Yeah.
I don't have a reason to do it except for just to see what it could do. But,
yeah. Well, I'm almost to the point where I'm gonna fire Odin up. I've got all my other stuff catching up, and I want to try some rubber stamp material and some anodized aluminum in Odin and see how that RF tube, you know, compares on some photos while I work on photos. So I'll just throw that in the mix and see what I come up with. So the row mark, that it'd be good to see what that would do on that too, if it'd make a difference changing the frequency, to see if that would affect, you know, how it ablated the material. I had a ULS laser, and you could adjust frequency on it too, but I didn't know enough about it to even know what that was for, you know, so I didn't ever experiment with that. So that's one of the first things I want to experiment with Odin, is why I'm about ready to fire it up, is to play with the frequency of that RF tube and see what it does to different materials.
Yeah, I wanted any color change as far as color of the material and frequency of the laser.
Yeah, I would think that it would in some instances, because that's like a MOPA. You know, you can get a whole range of colors on stainless, you know, with a MOPA, just by changing frequency and some stuff. So, you know, I think it'll be similar, you know, of course, you know, similar, but not exactly. But it should affect some sort of change. I don't know what. We'll find out though.
Can you guys use STLs for the relief engravings?
Absolutely. You'll have to convert them using Vector Expire or something like that. You'll have to use a software that'll do it. Where's that at? I've done it on wood and acrylic. Of course, I was just testing. I don't know what I'm doing, but I've got a couple of articles that actually the one on natural wood is a complete workflow. It takes you through the entire process from start to finish. And what we're basically using is the 3D grayscale depth map. So you have to get your STL converted to that depth map, you know, into that bitmap, and then sure. And I've got a full workflow on how to use it. The acrylic one looked cooler, and that actually did really well doing 3D relief in the acrylic. I want to do that with Odin and see if I can have some contrast changes. But absolutely you can. Now it won't accept the STL file natively. You know, you'll have to get it converted to the bitmap. But after that, it's completely capable.
Okay, so you're saying bitmap versus like a vector file?
Well, yeah, this wouldn't be a vector. This is all based on grayscale. So the way you'd have to set that up is use your grayscale for your image. It'd have to be a bitmap image, and it would be one that was created out of the STL in Aspire or some similar software. Maybe Fusion 360 will do it. I'm not sure. And then after you get the bitmap, the grayscale depth map, that bitmap image, then you just drag it into Lightburn, put it on grayscale, and or maybe even pass through. I think you can use pass through because it's already grayscale. and then set your power scale from 0 to 100% or whatever you want to do. And then anything that's white will be whatever your lower end of your power scale is, and whatever's black will be the high end. And then it'll change the power throughout the gradations from white to black automatically.
Okay, so I'm an additive manufacturing engineer, and so I have a ton of high-end machines that I use for additive manufacturing. But the thing that I can do is I can take, let's say, the picture that you had up, it was 10 layers high. I can actually export each of those images out and combine them, to be less complex, if you will, to make your bitmap image. So, so I can process each one of those layers one at a time, or does Lightburn itself just manage that automatically?
Well, it depends. If you're going to use vector layers, and you can output those yourself. If you're going to do this using a bitmap and using the grayscale feature, which is what you need to do to 3D relief engrave, then you wouldn't be using vectors. You'd be relying on the grayscale for the power scale. I'm not sure if I understand your question.
You got it. I probably made it more complicated than it needed to be.
Okay, but I mean, if you can generate if you can generate those, now the thing is that it needs to be an image in Lightburn. Well, it doesn't have to be. You'd have to figure out your layers, and manually set your layer parameters. I think that would be crazy. I think the bitmap would be the way to go. If you could generate the files that you have into that grayscale depth map, that would be the way that you'd need to do it.
Yeah, it definitely would be less work, but again, just depending on, some of the crazy things, like,
sure,
it's like, it's maybe the fiber laser that can do this, but you can take a piece of glass and actually engrave an image inside of the glass. You know what I'm talking about? It's like those 3D. Yeah, that's where I'm kind of going with this.
The bubblegrams, yeah. So those are a little bit different in the fact that their focal length, their focal plane is real crazy, and that's how they get that depth. Normal CO2 laser, it'll burn all the way through the substrate. There's no way for it to, and those are specialized lasers that do those bubblegrams. And I'm not sure. I've heard that some of them use 2 different beams, and where they intersect, it makes the right frequency to cause the microfracture. And again, these lasers don't really think in 3D, so that would not be. Now maybe with the fiber it can, but I haven't seen anybody do a bubblegram on a fiber or a MOPA, not a Galvo. But I'm not too sure about that. I think that's a specialized machine though, unless they have a specialty substrate for it now.
Again, sorry to obliterate the chat with questions earlier.
No, that's fine. The more questions, the better. Otherwise, I'm sitting here going through bad files on Lightburn.
Understood. So, so the question I had on cleaning the machine earlier is just so I know that there's a lot of soot that can build up, but the side rails, the y-axis, are exposed. And do you have any debris that can get over into those? Because I know you guys have like side panels for access to kind of get in there. Is that where you normally clean that, or is the debris really just kind of go straight down?
Most of the big pieces go straight down. Of course, there'll be dust everywhere, but you don't usually have pieces fly off and come up and get hung up in the mechanical systems, the motion control, and that kind of thing, if that's what you're asking. Now, if there is a little speck of something over there and that roller tries to hit it over that rail, it could do something. It could collide or something, but we don't have really any reports of that I can recall. I mean,
yeah, it's just the fine debris is what I'm talking about. Like when you're sawing, with like a table saw or something. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking like big chunks of wood flying everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I just take a microfiber cloth and wipe off my rails every couple of days or something. That's literally all it takes. And then once a month, I'll light it, coat it with that light penetrating oil or something like that. They show in the manual to use that lubricant they provide, and that's just because they provide it and they know it'll be there for you to use. But just anything to inhibit corrosion, right there where those similar metals are meeting on each side. But but that's not even really an issue. I think they just learned that from long ago, and that's why we always say to do it. But I don't have a lick of corrosion. I haven't really deep cleaned my machine. I just wipe it off with a rag every couple of days and literally do nothing else to it. So, but I know what you mean about that fine powder, because when I did copiers and IT stuff, we'd have to go clean this copier out every week, and the maintenance schedule was like every quarter. We'd have to go every week and go clean that thing out, because the dust, even though they were in an office inside of a factory that had big lasers in it that cut wood all day, it was incredible the amount of stuff, and that is finer dust than anything I've ever seen. You know, so it gets everywhere for sure.
Brian, I've heard you use the terms fiber and galvo, and could you explain what the differences are in those technologies?
Yeah, so there's basically two common laser gantry types, or laser beam steering technologies, I guess you could say. And one of them is the gantry, like our Thunder, and it has an X and Y axis, and it moves back and forth on the carriage. And that's a gantry laser. A fiber laser is more like, imagine the scanner at Walmart. When you scan your price tag, there's a little mirror spinning around in there, and it's making the laser beam fly all over the place. That's what a galvo is. And then you can have that with the CO2 or a fiber. So when we're talking about fiber, that's a different laser source. It's not a glass CO2 laser beam. It's a solid state device, and it has a different frequency, a large difference in the frequency, and it can actually ablate metals where the 10,600 nanometer CO2 cannot. So technically you can have a galvo fiber laser, which is a fiber source in the little mirrors, which is really fast, but it's usually a small work area. You got a theta lens that you have to worry about, and the bigger you get, the resolution gets, it's crazy. And then you can have gantry, but you could also have what is it, Epilogue diffusion, I think. It's a gantry laser, but it's dual source, so you can get it with dual source. It has a CO2 and a fiber on it, so you kind of get the best of both worlds, unless you consider combining components, kind of like getting a TV with a VCR. If the VCR breaks, the TV is no good either. I don't, however you want to think about that all in one kind of stuff. I'd prefer to have a separate one of each. You could maximize your ROI if you can run them both at the same time doing different work. But anyway, that's just me. I know I went around the tree to answer that, Mark.
Oh, thank you. That helped a lot.
But basically, there's two sources that we typically see, the CO2 and the fiber, and then you can direct those beams either way. And the CO2 galvo lasers are neat because they're fast. Those are used a lot like denim, like jeans, the jeans industry, to put all those patterns on the pockets and things like that, because it's just like zip and it's done. That's what I love about the galvo. It's just so fast. It's cool to watch. So. And I've started an article about some of those different things, just some generic laser stuff, but I don't have time to dip in there at them right now. But one of these days, maybe we can populate some more general information about that kind of thing in there. So.
And the press release.
The what?
Press release.
Yes. Got to have press releases. So. Yeah. And it's about 2 minutes to 4. I'm going to kill the recording real quick because